What's up, everybody? Welcome to a special, and I say that with emphasis, creator interview today because our boy Frank Martin is back. You might have heard him come on talk Last Homicide, Polar Paradox, P1 Nokia, and man, he's back again, dude. And let me tell you, anytime Frank is back on, you know there's going to be a really good comic book discussion, and he is back again talking about his latest Kickstarter campaign, which you have 1 week left to back. You got to back this. I'm going to preface that right away. Where the Nightmares Are, it's a good horrific spin on a kids classic that we all love, Where the Wild Things Are. We're going to kind of give you some spoiler-free discussion on it, but first things first, go ahead, Hops Geek News, any podcasting platform, any social media platform, that's where you can find us, right? As always, hasn't changed. And then I have to do my due diligence and remind you that we will be at MegaCon February 1st through 4th. We are going to be doing panels. We are going to be running around at breweries. We're going to be probably at Epcot. You name it, we're there. That's where you're going to find Lauren and I in the same space, having a good old time. So without further ado, Frank, welcome back. Remind the fine folks who you are and what it is that you do that makes our lives so much fun.
Well, I thank you for having me back. This is always a blast to be here. I'm a writer. I write novels and comic books and of all sorts of genres and styles, and I don't stop doing it for some reason. I
You're good at it. So I'm glad that you don't stop because it gives us something exciting to read every single time.
well, thank you.
Now, let's dive into like we'll get some spoiler free thoughts. I kind of want to get into this because like I've already talked about, you went from a wide array. You know, you did some sci-fi stuff with the Polar Paradox. You did some Last Homicide, so you dove into that
A
thriller
mafia-esque.
aspect. Yeah. And now this one you're back with a kind of a good horror. And I know you're a big fan of movies. I know you're a big fan of horror. So what made you go into the horror business this time around?
The horror.
Um, it's a combination of things. I mean, I don't think I've ever met anyone who said Where the Wild Things Are, that book sucks. Like, I don't.
That's true.
That's
I've
actually
never heard
true.
anybody say anything negative about
Oh,
that book. Yeah.
you know what it is? It's so simple. It's such a basic thing. The art drives the story. It's a very simple story, and it's something that like pretty much everybody can kind of relate to on some level, especially
Mhm.
when they're a kid. You just want to escape, you know? And so I wanted I I've been a big fan of it. It's meant a lot to me when I was a kid. And I always thought though it touches on horror, but it's not horror. I mean, you got monsters, they chase this kid, but he doesn't really lean heavily into it. So I've always wanted to put my own spin on it. And it was really just a matter of finding the right artist that can kind of blend the fantastical with the whimsical, with the all ages, doing all of that together. And Felipe is an artist who I threw up a bunch of pitches at. This was one of them. And I'm like, I hope he picks this one because I know he can really kill it. And he did. He jumped right out of it. And he immediately went to go designing what the nightmares look like. So it's just something that's been percolating in my brain for a while. And it's just a matter of coming together with the right team to make it happen.
Yeah. And it really was like Where the Wild Things Are meets like Tim Burton a little bit.
See, I'm
So I
dumb.
loved seeing the creatures and whatnot were very, and you even mentioned Nightmare Before Christmas. And as soon as I saw that in the because I read the description before I read the comic, I was like, oh well, I mean that's a weakness
I
for me,
didn't even
Nightmare.
do that. This is how dumb I am. I opened up the book, started reading, and I was like, wow, I'm getting like Where the Wild Things Are vibes. And I put that in our notes even. And then I went back and read like the description and it was like Where the Wild Things Are. I was like, oh, now it makes
Well, I mean, you
Oh,
even have Maxine,
duh,
Max.
yeah.
Yeah.
and then the title it's very close to Where the Wild Things Are. I wonder why that is.
I wanted to go in blind. Like I
No, I
don't know. And
completely ripped it off. I knocked it off 100%.
good
Any
news.
connection
This
that you want
now
to,
is going to be
I'm gonna,
played in court over plagiarism case,
I'm
and we're
gonna
all going to be called to the
deny,
stand.
I'm gonna deny all connection to Where the Wild Things Are. This is all my idea from start to finish.
100% down to the T. But
Yeah, as
Well,
an attorney, I'm going to tell you to stop talking right now.
I did a lot of research before I fully committed to this idea. I wanted to make sure I wasn't doing any
You're
copyright
properly parodying it.
problems, yeah,
Yeah.
or intellectual property stuff. And all you got to do is go on Amazon and Google Where the Wild Things Are, and you see all of the parodies. And I'm like, I think I'll be okay. And
Well, and it's different. You know, it's not
Yeah.
the exact same story. It is different.
I mean, we could get into the weeds of intellectual property law, but one of the key things is it can't, if you're parodying something or doing an homage or something, it can't pull from the market of the original. This is a comic book. It's not a children's story. It's its own thing with own characters, own storyline that's heavily influenced, but not like violating the intellectual property. So I did my due diligence, and I think I'll be okay.
Well, I mean, one of our questions we always ask comic book writers, which I'm sure you know because you've been on here multiple times, is who are your inspirations? Every creative draws inspirations from places. So, I mean, this book clearly inspired you to write this other book.
Yeah. Where the Wild Things Are, like you said, Tim Burton. It's got a very Nightmare on Elm Street feel to it. As far as direct comic book people, Neil Gaiman is big into fantasy and those fantasy worlds. So people always influence you in subtle ways that you're not always conscious of. So I always carry those writers that I love and grew up reading in my brain, whether I'm doing it on purpose or not.
Right. A lot of times you don't even realize, like I will regularly say to my kids that, you know, I'll eat you up. I love you so. So, and yeah, the other day my son actually made a little crown. He wanted me to like create it, and then he painted it, and he just painted it yellow and put it on. And I'm like, oh, you look like Max. So,
yeah, like sometimes there's obviously direct homages that I have. We were talking about one in the book before we started recording, but other times it just kind of slips in there, and I don't even realize. And somebody would point it out to me, and I'll be like, "Yeah, that does look exact. I copied the thing. I didn't even realize."
Right. Well, it's like when your kids will finally watch a movie from when you were younger, and they're like, "Oh, you say that all the time." I'm like, "Oh, is that where I got it from?" It's in our subconscious. So let's go back to obviously you love this book, so that's kind of what inspired, or you love Where the Wild Things Are, which is what inspired you to create this story. But you were telling us a little bit before that, because when I opened this up, I was like, this first page, this is my daughter. She wants to watch all the scary movies. Ian, if I tell her no, she will, fight me tooth and nail. And sometimes I have to quote, the guy from Mandalorian, I have spoken, but she just wants to watch all the horror. And so this right off the first page, that's what's happening. It's a parent and a child, and they're arguing about watching a scary movie. So tell us a little bit about what inspired you to create the story at the beginning, starting like that.
When I first decided to do this story, I wanted to expand the connection between Max and the parent, because the parent's really, I don't even think the parent's on the page in the original Where the Wild Things Are. I mean, the movie expands it and such, but I don't think you actually see Max interact with his mom. I think it's in the book. They're just yelling back and forth, I think, from the bedroom. And that was just a point that I could have taken and expanded upon and made it my own. And in the process of doing that, I'm like, I need this to have punch. I need it to have meaning. And I thought the best way to do that is to model it after my own relationship with my daughter. I call her my horror buddy because my sons don't really like horror. My wife doesn't like to watch scary things with me. But for some reason, my daughter's just like, yeah, more killing. And I'm like,
okay, the more they die, the better it is, and the better I sleep.
Yeah. So I was like, this is perfect. It's a Where the Wild Things Are. It's about I took a girl who loves horror, who was kind of denied that, and I modeled her after my own daughter. And so that, I guess, multiple parents and children have this same interaction with a kid coming downstairs wanting to watch a horror movie with their parents. And I thought, this is the relationship I need to build the story off of. And I felt by making it personal, I kind of owned Where the Wild Things Are, and I really made it my own by doing that, by making it as personal as possible, rather than just some generic kid and some generic parents and trying to copy the original.
Now, our kids are definitely 100% our harshest critics. Has your daughter gotten to read it?
I did, yeah. So we're in competition right now because later on in the year, I'm launching a book that's based on my son. It's definitely more of a kid, all ages book. It's called The Fart Bomb. It's going to be all comedy, and it's actually going to have it's going to be my family. So my son, my daughter, my other son, my wife, and then I'm making that alongside this one. So they're like, my youngest, who's in first grade, he's like, when am mine going to be done? And my daughter says, no, my book is going to be ready first. She thinks it's her book.
Right.
So, but she read it with my wife when I actually got a print copy, a proof, now. So they read it together, and she loved it, and she loves going through it because I told her this is based off of you. So she sees Max and she thinks that she's her going on the adventures and playing with the nightmares, and she digs it.
That's awesome, and that's something she'll always have.
Yeah. So the fart bomb book is not finished yet, so we'll have to see reaction to that one.
We're gonna see.
That sounds like something my 6-year-old would love. Yeah.
my kids both like would love that. But what I love like from this, there's a panel too that just like this expressive, shout out to Felipe, because she's walking up the stairs when the dad's just like, no, you can't watch this. And she's just like grumbling to herself, very angsty like. And I'm like, this is my daughter. I could relate to my daughter because she does the same thing. It's like, hey, it's time for bed. It's time for this. She's like, ooh, okay. And just like trudges.
And that only gets better as the years go on. Trust me.
She's only 5. So yeah.
I had an interaction with my daughter the other day. She was throwing some tantrum. I forget what it was. And we're in the living room. And she says, get out. And I'm like, get out. I'm like, what do you mean? Of the house, of the town? And she goes, my life. And I'm like, I can never write a line as good as that.
The things that they say on the fly, it kind of impresses you at times because you're just like, wait, what? And then you want to laugh inherently as a parent.
Yeah. I had a good time with the dialogue too, because as an all ages book, you really get to lean into your inner kid and say like the stupidest things. And she's coming up the stairs, and I'm saying she needs to call the father something. She can't call the father like an asshole.
Right.
And I'm like, what's a good kid insult? And I landed on stink breath. So now my daughter kind of has taken and ran with that. She calls me stink breath.
That's amazing. It's just like she really has owned the book.
Yeah, she digs it. Because she I think she likes being a horror freak, which is weird because she dresses in pink all the time, and she's like, I call her a combination between Poppy from Trolls and the Joker. Like if
that's wow, that's good.
That's a hell of a combo.
Especially because like I can see that exactly. As somebody who was also raising a daughter, and Trolls was our life for the longest time, and Trolls 3 was still dominating the household. That's kind of funny. Because they're like a Sour Patch Kid, right? They're sour maybe, and then they get sweet, or vice versa, and it's just you never know what you're dealing with.
Yeah, my 11-year-old is my number. I've never had a bully before. She's my first ever bully because my oldest was always nice to me, but then she also wants the most hugs and is the most affectionate.
No, yeah, I don't get it. There are some things when it comes to my daughter, I just turn to my wife and I'm like, I'm passing.
What do I do? Or this is your situation.
Yeah, no, this is all you. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, yeah, my husband will look at me sometimes. I'm like, he's like, well, what with? Because Kaylee, I always knew what to do with my oldest, and I'm done with her. She's grown. And this one, I'm like, I don't know. I'm at a loss. But no, the horror thing, I really leaned into the horror this past Halloween, so it's been a lot of fun. And like, I'm gonna have her read this comic as well, and it's been really interesting because seeing her reactions, because you never know how they're going to react. And like she watches the old ones and she's not scared at all. They're just cheesy to her. Mm-hmm. So how does your daughter react with the older stuff versus the newer stuff? Does the newer stuff at least scare her a little or no?
I think she likes it all. You know what she does? She gauges how old a movie is by what type of phone that they're using.
Oh, that's smart.
Ouch.
So when we were watching Scream, we're going through the trilogy and then 4, and then every time we start a new one, she's asking, "Are they going to have smartphones yet?" I'm like, I don't know. It's this movie came out in 2010.
Just Google, and it's like, oh,
some people had iPhones, some people didn't. I don't. It was a wild time. I don't.
People had Blackberries.
Hey, what do you want from me? I'm like,
listen, you just had to be there. Some of us had razors. Some of us had the kick from T-Mobile when T-Mobile sucked.
Yeah,
it was the wild west. But
we're actually big into Stranger. My daughter's not watching it. I don't know why. For some reason, Stranger Things. I think she would love it. She's just like, not enough people are dying. I'm like, okay, but my 2 non-horror fans, my 2 boys, they love it. They absolutely. My 6-year-old was a Demogorgon for Halloween last year.
How cute.
So, and it takes place in the 80s. So it's very cool seeing them go into Radio Shack and use payphones. And I'm like, she's like, how come he just doesn't call her? I'm like, with what? Like,
right.
Cell phones.
It's the 80s, man.
It's like Home Alone. Like if there were cell phones, the movie would have ended like that.
Without a track.
Or decent cops in the area.
Jeez. But back to this comic real quick though. So speaking of all the horror elements that we throw into it, something that I really enjoyed was in the beginning of the issue. It's very Felipe and you guys both have that contrast of the darkness and like you use a lot of dark purples, all of that kind of stuff. And something that I really loved is there was a page that just flips the script. You have her and they're like having a giant party and everything's so like bubbly and bright. That was for me as a standout part. Did you name the creatures? Do you have a name for the creatures at all?
Ooh. Interesting question. So they're not actually named in the story. In order to differentiate them in the script, I did name them because they talk. So I couldn't put Nightmare.
Right. That's what made me think about it because I know they talk.
So
there's just two of them.
I knew they weren't going to be named in the story. So just for the sake of it, I named them after the 4 Ninja Turtles in the script.
Yes.
Yeah. That's amazing.
So yeah, Leo, Raph, Mikey, and Donnie. So that's kind of how it works.
Incredible. I love that so much.
That is hilarious.
I'm like, there's 4 of them. It makes sense.
I mean, yeah, and it doesn't like they're not named yet. She never quite calls, and then just like you were talking about how we were talking about it's Where the Wild Things Are. She's very much, I'm the queen, but then she starts to have those realizations, right? Like, I'm spoiling it, Lauren. I need you to
stop.
You. Yes,
I need you to ask questions that don't give away everything.
Because it's so hard. Because I literally can't tell you like this. This is a very very fun comic book, and I also in my lens. Is I view it almost as a gateway to horror. If you do have a child who is on the cusp of like, do I let them watch? Do I let them read something like Stranger Things or something, maybe cheesy horror?
Yeah.
This is very much kind of like a gateway drug,
like
if you
Goosebumps.
will, to that. Yeah, this is like a Goosebumps, Fear Street style to me is the vibe I get because Maxine, she's a child, she's kind of angsty, right? A lot of parents we can relate to that. And she escapes through her writing or in her drawing because she wants to watch these horror movies and then she goes to this world. So to me, like I love this and it is very much a gateway kind of thing. Do you plan on doing any more with Maxine and her ability to kind of go back to this world, or is this kind of like a one-off for you?
I think it's definitely a one-off. I had a book called The Macabre Motel. That was
I read that one.
Yeah.
You read that one?
Yeah.
I don't remember if we talked about it. But so when that book first came out, everyone kept asking me if this was a one-off or if I was going to do a follow-up. My answer was no. I have no plans for a sequel, but I always keep the door open. And then one day I was driving and it just like an idea for a sequel just hit me and I ran with it. So I'm making a follow-up this year to that book.
Oh, nice.
So I never say never to anything. But Where the Wild Things Are, it's such a definitive, like, this is what it is. Yeah. And that's what I did. So the idea to revisit her and to expand upon her outside of the source material that I drew from, I don't know. I don't know if I necessarily want to do that. Like I said, I never say never to anything. Mm-hmm. But I don't see me coming back to Max. Even though I do love her, her story exists within the confines of Where the Wild Things Are. So to try to do my own thing to keep it going, it just wouldn't feel right.
No, that makes sense. And I'm one of those that's like, if I like something, I want more content. But I am also like with Nightmare Before Christmas, I don't want anything else. Nightmare, it's so perfect. Leave it alone. And I really felt like this comic was Where the Wild Things Are meets Nightmare Before Christmas. And both of those are one-offs that don't need anything else.
Yeah. Nightmare was definitely a very specific cult movie that had a very interesting behind the scenes story. I don't know if you ever watched those.
I watched all of it.
What are those movies?
The movies that made us.
Yeah, they did a Nightmare. They did a Nightmare Before Christmas episode. It was great.
Yeah, and there's also one the Disney props. They did one on Nightmare. Yeah, I'm shocked how every Halloween and Christmas now blows my mind how popular it's gotten.
The tidbit from that story that resonated with me the most, the story meaning the how the movies that made us, was that the screenwriter for the movie, they like gave him advance to write the script and he just didn't deliver. And they're like, where is it? Where is it? And they couldn't get a hold of him. And they found out he took the advance and like bought an 8 ball of Coke and went to Vegas or something.
As one does, of course.
Yeah.
It's my Friday night.
Same.
I'm like, I don't know. I thought that was
actually, I'm glad you. Okay, I don't know why this is a good. In my brain, this is a good segue. So when I initially started this book, right, I see the dad. He's not like disheveled, because then I think
Grumpy.
about like what. Yeah, he's like, and then I'm like, maybe this is what I look like. But I was very like, oh, is she gonna like disappear in some imagination because her dad's kind of like a deadbeat? It's the vibe that it gives off. So did you kind of toy with that idea in your head initially, or did you just, what kind of direction did you give as far as the dad looks? Because in my mind it was like, oh, maybe they have a disconnected relationship, but it turns out they have a really good relationship.
Yeah, bonding over
that was not me at all. So I didn't give any descriptions to the dad. Felipe kind of designed him, and my first thought was, if this book is based on me and my daughter, and that's supposed to be me, I'm not a big
fan.
You're
the deadbeat looking dad.
I was like, I'm not a big fan of that, but you know what? I wanted him to really make the book his own, and that involved using his concept design. So I was like, there's nothing wrong with the dad. Like there was nothing about the dad that would have influenced the story negatively. I think the dad is Max's dad, so I didn't want to change. But I agree. He does. He did. It gives off a, I had a really rough day at the office vibe.
Yes, we can.
Or just I'm a parent vibe.
They're there.
But that was
I want to watch this movie. I don't want to watch it with you. Just go upstairs and
go upstairs, play with your iPad, please. I need 10
minutes.
Yeah, what's
the I was gonna say Nick Fury book, Samuel L. Jackson book, just go the fuck to sleep.
Yes. But like realistically though, like one thing that stood out to me was this book is about appearances aren't as they seem, almost, because you got the dad, and then they go to this land and the monsters, you're like, oh, you thought they're gonna attack her straight from the get-go, but no, like,
do we need to stop you, Matt?
Be my queen.
Do we need to
Matt,
stop?
We need a safe word.
Anyways, what I love about this book is that yes, appearances aren't as they seem, and so that's what popped in my mind, was like, oh, this dad, maybe he just has some issues, but no, it's just a nice dad. Anyways,
he's just a dad.
To kind of, I guess, to touch on what you want to talk about without actually spoiling anything, I think
this is hard. Just
fear is like the big theme of the book, right? So Max wants to watch this scary movie, and she doesn't because her dad says it's too scary for her, and she says, I'm not as scared of anything. So her journey is basically going to where the nightmares are and learning that fear can take many different forms. You know, everybody's afraid of something. And it's Max coming to this realization is the, I would say, the core theme of the book, the driving narrative.
Right. Which you see in Where the Wild Things Are too.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's Where the Wild Things Are serves as a template for this book. Like if you read Where the Wild Things Are, you're not going to get any surprises. It's I use the same formula, you know, but I definitely tried to put my own signature on it.
Yeah, it's a fun spin, 100%. And it's like, you know, if you read comic books and you go to some of these movies, it's like the people who were distraught at the end of Infinity War, whereas everybody else was like, yeah, we knew that was how it was going to end, that Thanos was going to snap half of everybody away. Like, that wasn't sad. We knew it was coming, but it was still fun to watch. You still enjoy seeing the spin and the twist and seeing things a little bit different. You know, things we love, seeing them different is always fun.
When people say that, oh, that story is so predictable, I go, that's not really a negative. There's stories that I'm surprised by. I like, there are other stories that are predictable. And I like to say, look, when you go on a roller coaster, you can see the roller coaster. Yeah. You know what the track is. That doesn't make it any less fun to ride it, you know?
Well, and we also love rewatching things, and we know how they end.
Yes, Lauren, she definitely does.
You're talking about Supernatural.
But speaking of that, into the Kickstarter, since we do have a week left, there's some really cool things that I think you guys did too. For example, the wraparound homage cover that was limited. It's, you know, like, I love the artwork of that. So shout out obviously to Ryan Lee and Jay Hammond, who also helped on this book too. There's some really cool variant covers. What are some things campaign wise that you wanted to really hit upon this time around?
So that homage cover was a last minute addition.
It was a theme song, by the way. There's a theme song in case people don't
remember. I have a theme song for all of my projects.
That's true.
So the guy that does my theme songs, I've been working with him for years. And I always joke him. I'm like, once we get to 12, we'll have an album and we could put out an EP. And yeah, but the homage cover was the last second edition. It was like, I don't know, a week or two before the campaign was to launch. And I kept having this idea in my mind. I'm like, the iconic cover of Where the Wild Things Are, it has such iconic imagery. Like when you pictures just pop in your head. I'm like, it was itching in the back of my mind to like model after the typeface and to do a similar image. And he's like, "Do you want me to do the art style?" I'm like, "Yeah, try to match the art style too." I was like, "This is it's just pulling at me too much that I couldn't not do it." So he did that really fast, and I put together a cover template in Illustrator, and that was what I actually printed. I printed out the homage cover because I wasn't sure how it was going to look in practice. So I printed it out even before the Kickstarter went live, and no surprise, I not sure when it sold out, but at some point I went to check and it was gone. So
amazing.
So people obviously it resonated. The concept they definitely liked, but I still love the other covers too.
It's all beautiful artwork. One thing that really stands out, obviously, is the artwork. Like, I know we're getting to talk to you and talk about the writing, but a lot of times people forget about the other work that goes into it. And I think what you guys do is work really well together as a team.
Yeah, it's a collaboration.
Yeah, it's one fluid unit. And I always love, like, especially you get really creative with the things that you do within your Kickstarters, which make it a lot of fun. And I just it's amazing. And like you said, you're gonna have an EP here soon. I can't wait to like it's how we got James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy mix. Pretty soon we're gonna have Frank Martin's I don't even know what we're gonna call it, but we're gonna come up with something and it's gonna be the music that slaps and we're gonna save the world to that.
Well, it's bizarre because I'm not musically inclined. I'm terrible when it comes to music. I can't write anything. I can't play an instrument. So the fact that Lane Thomas is his name, the fact that I can send him any book, I don't do anything. I just take the book, I send it to him, I go make music, and he's like, yeah, fine, okay. And then a week later, he's like, tell me if this is good. And I'm like, how do you do this? I don't like.
Yeah, that blows my mind.
Is this good? Yes, it's like the greatest thing I've heard this week.
What do you read mean? A book. It doesn't matter if it's a crime noir, sci-fi, straight up horror, whimsical horror. It doesn't matter what it is. You just read it and you make music that matches it. I'm like, you're a magician. Like, I don't know.
Like Danny Elfman, going back to Nightmare. Like, he wrote all those songs. They gave him the idea of the movie, and Danny Elfman's like, okay, I got this, and wrote all these songs. It's an amazing talent that some people have.
I'm thoroughly impressed by the music he comes across. He also, I did a project last year called Hospice. That was I worked with a bunch of other creators, and the concept is that there's this universe with this brand of hospice, and it has demons and all this other stuff. But the concept is that the hospice exists in a universe. So I wanted to try to flesh it out and make it real. And I approached Lane and I said, "Can you make if I give you a script?" Can you make like a 1.5-minute radio spot commercial for the hospice? He's like, yeah, no problem. And he just did it. And all of my collaborators on that project said, this is going to be stupid. And I sent it to them and I was like, they were like, did a good job.
You were saying,
yeah. It's very weird. Like testimonials talking about the hospice, and then he has like the disclaimer voice at the end going really fast. So he's very talented with what he does,
and it's fun too. And so why don't you let people know, obviously, where they can find this Kickstarter, and more specifically, like where is it that they can find all of your work?
Kickstarter, you could search Where the Nightmares Are. It's on there. It's a project we love. Also, kind of the easiest way to get to all my stuff, frankthewriter.com. You can sign up to my mailing list. I give updates on my work and little writing musings, and I have a online store there and a bunch of free reads. And if you want to immerse yourself in my writing world, that's the best place to do it.
And if you're still just as confused, just guys, it's in the description of this episode. You've all failed the test. What are you doing? It's here. The Kickstarter has 8 days to go. They have, as of this moment, $4,265 with a goal of $2,500. So you absolutely know that you're getting quality, and everything goes into these fantastic creators, fantastic writers, artists, everything. Like I said, when Frank, hits our messages, I already know that something good's about to come through it. And it gets me excited, just like this one did right here. It's been so hard not to just like talk about every little detail, and maybe down the road when this gets into people's hands, we can revisit this because I think everybody's gonna like it. And Lauren, before I, go all Tom Holland, Mark Ruffalo on this entire story, do you have any final thoughts and words?
No, both my kids are texting me things. I don't. I've loved all your comics, different genres and different art, and I also love that every comic is so different with the art and it matches up so well. And just yeah, I mean, we're big fans of you, obviously, and can't wait to read. What was it? The Big Fart,
The Fart Bomb.
the Fart Bomb.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
So the
gonna be
premise
cool.
behind that one is my 6-year-old weaponizes his farts against the rest of the family.
Oh, mine already does that.
Yes.
Well, that's how I came up with the idea. So
Shocking.
what happened one day is he was wearing pull-ups at the time, and he farted in his pull-up, but it didn't seep out. And then he jumped on the couch and landed on his ass, and it exploded. And he's like, "That's my fart bomb." And I was like,
It's like
"Dude,
Mario when you jump on Goombas, except for with his
exactly,
fart.
exactly." So I was like, "Dude, you got something there." So
That is good. And once that gets into production, we would if you want to come back on, man, we are always happy to have you as far as any projects that you have coming up. I know you're cooking up some good stuff. I really appreciate you sharing this with us. I really appreciate you coming on and hanging out. It's just always feels like a good hangout session every time we have you on and get to talk some cool stuff. And folks, like I said, check this out. I promise you, it's in the description. Follow it, back it, all that good stuff. You're not going to be disappointed, especially if you're like millennials, like we are, elder millennials, whatever it is. You grew up with Where the Wild Things Are, and so this is a fun twist on that story. And Frank,
read
thank
with your
you.
kids.
Yeah, read it with your kids, man. If
It's
you're,
all ages. It's meant to be read with kids.
it's a gateway, and it's
It's
not
a
scary.
horror gateway.
Listen, trust me, Dewey. You want a part of this. Trust me. And with that said, Frank, thanks again, man. I seriously, I can't thank you enough. It's always a good time. And we're going to look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you.
Guys, we'll catch you next week with our Scott Pilgrim episode. And don't forget, MegaCon's coming up. I got to keep plugging that away because we're there. So make sure you come in, say hi to us, or at least one of us, or both of us, or catch us at a panel, whatever it is. We will see you there, or we will see you another time.
We'll have koozies.
Yes. Cheers.